good point. There's we've had discussions offline about where I would explain, and this is something you taught me, right? So I would explain to someone that if someone says to me, listen, I'm telling someone I'm going to be late for a meeting, right? Or they tell me they're going to be late for a meeting. I respond with the words, no worries, which is a double negative, correct? Versus I then choose the words all good. Now in your mind is, and it was a kind of a revelation for me, and I'd like to expand on it. So the revelation for me was the usage of the language changed the context. Even though you don't realize the context has changed, two negative words are still two negative words, regardless of how you perceive them. Is that correct?
Well, you have to remember that the mind, or the unconscious mind, where everything gets run from. So your behaviors get run there, your organization, your memories, everything. And it thinks in terms of pictures. It does not understand grammar. So if I say to you, don't think of a pink elephant sitting in a blue tree, what are you going to think of?
Pink elephant.
That's exactly what you're going to think of, because it doesn't hear negatives. It doesn't compute. So when you use language like no problem, all your mind is hearing is problem.
No and problem.
Yeah. And if you say don't worry, it's not going to hear don't. It's only going to hear worry.
Right.
So that's interesting to me. So expand more on how we see it in pictures, right? Because again, when she said pink elephant, I saw pink elephant. So how does that relate back in? So when we
in a blue tree.
In a blue tree.
Remember,
Yes.
in a blue tree. Yeah.
So when we see that in pictures, right? So relating, so our mind, again, how does that dictate? Because so all language that's said to you, so regardless of what the language is, so if you read something, and the reason I'm touching on this is it always comes back to the CIA programming that there's a lot of CIA programming that specifically works on neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes.
And how they use wording, right?
And consciousness as well, they know all about it.
Right. So now that type of wording is, so if you write something, and we've seen this the last 4 years, especially over COVID, right? So think of when you saw the presenter on TV on CNN, the CNN anchor, right? He goes on the news and he says a specific lining of words, right? And then that specific lining of words is repeated through every news article by every different person as if it was planned, right? That planning is
That's programming.
It's programmed. It's a science.
It's absolutely, yes, it's absolutely
Right.
programming.
Now, let's break it down to its simplest terms. This is something that we do on a daily basis that we're not completely unaware of.
Yes. And it happens from childhood. And we don't even know that we're doing it. Don't do that for this reason, don't do that for that reason. We create all of these little programs that's running in the background. And before you know it, all you are these external programs.
Okay.
And depending on your threshold, depending how many times you have to hear a specific thing before you decide that is true, they just have to blast this programming a few times from a few different areas, because now you're like, oh, I heard that once before. I didn't think it was true the first time, but now I've heard it again, so now it must be true.
I want to take this back. So what that takes me back to the religious and even the government aspect of manipulation would be the word I would use, right? If I think back to my childhood where I grew up in extreme religion with a private school, and the manipulation by leaders or organizations to get their people to do what they would need them to do.
Yes.
In my mind, if I think about these mega churches and these schools and things like that, right? I would call it, even in a business. Like, I came from a corporation that, their culture was like longevity within the company. They created this culture of people that every meeting they started with, this is programming, every meeting they started, when you stood up, you told your name, the location you came from, and how many years you've been with the company. That's literally programming, because it became a contest in the room to see who was the longest tenured person. And it was a big deal when you were that long tenured person, right? So it's that programming to say, don't leave us. Stay here forever.
Yeah.
When you think about religion, you're programmed to not question the rules. You're not don't question
Follow
what we're doing.
without question.
In fact, if you question, you're going to hell.
Yeah. I mean,
You're not allowed to doubt anything.
And
what really woke me up, right?
Yeah.
So this is what allowed me to truly, and my mother would vouch for this. I'd always stay up and have these late night conversations with her about just God and faith and what if, why, or why is it like that, or what if, right? What if it's not actually the case? And my point of even saying all this, right? If God is the God that we believed He is, when Jesus walked the earth, the person that never went in and claimed a religion anywhere, if He was the God that we believe that He is, then why are all the other religions wrong?
Yes.
Right? And so for me, that was a question that always stuck with me, where, if we're really truly believing these stories of the Bible, and we're believing all the things that are out there, well, then who cares what religion you are? If it's all under the same principles and beliefs of a higher power,
It doesn't
and I think,
matter.
and to me, what it is, it doesn't really matter. But the organizations are doing stuff where they're trying to manipulate you to stay put, so that you continue to provide and give them financial resources so that their organization can stay alive.
And it's fascinating to speak about that, because while we're talking about that, the reason we're so open to talking about it is because our programming through the hypnosis and NLP has been broken. Which is part of what you do, correct?
Yes.
You, besides breaking your limited beliefs, which you, again, it's very personal, because it's going to be based on your experiences, things that you've done, your traumas that you're dealing with. But, I mean, it doesn't stop there, does it?
No, it's very personal, and you never know where a session is going to go. So you ask somebody to write their story. I normally know where to go with that, because I can see what they didn't write about. So if you don't talk about your children, I know, okay, well, there's something that we really need to discuss. And it might not necessarily happen in that first session. Normally, it's only one session, but if somebody really has a lot of trauma, or they are very stuck in their beliefs, you might need more than one session. It doesn't happen very often, and I also offer Zoom calls for the ladies that have done this, and there we discuss a lot of those things. But it goes very far. The programming that you're talking about, it's systemic, it's global, it's systemic, and it's in absolutely everything that we've ever.
And it's thousands of years old.
And it's thousands and thousands of years old. Because what is the best way to get somebody to do what you want them to do is you make them believe that they are in control of their lives when they really are not. You have to work 9 to 5. You have to make a living. How do I make ends meet? Just listen to the language, and you can hear how it's been manipulated over time.
Well, that's the struggle I have with school systems, even, right?
Absolutely.
Like we're taught in schools to grow up and get ready to go to college, get a good job, make your money, and work.
Retire or die.
Yeah.
Well, the purpose of it was to create little employees.
Right.
To create the people to push the elites up, right?
Right.
Why do governments not like it when you have a lot of self-employed people? Why do they
there's
not?
no limited control.
Yeah, why don't they support entrepreneurs?
Right.
Like, how many times have you? I mean, you the other business that you're. How many times have you heard people don't qualify because they are self-employed?
Why is Trump rocking the system right now? Because he's pushing freedom of speech, where they want suppression under freedom, right? So we can't have free speech because it might hurt someone else, but then that completely deletes the idea of free speech, which is I'm liking where the conversation is going, because what I want to touch on is we talk about people who are awake. COVID was a great thing because I think it woke up a whole bunch of people, and part of what the hypnosis I also feel does is once you release that barrier you have between the intuitive mind and your logical mind, which you go through this. The next part that I always find exciting is it's amazing how people all of a sudden, people that have never spoken about extra paranormal experiences, intuitive experiences. Now, is there conspiracies in the government, right? Which now we know they're out in the open. And all of a sudden their minds are open to speaking about things where previously they were closed, which I always find fascinating.
Yeah, it takes a lot to dismantle it. Some people have been stuck in that belief system for so long. It's like being in a cult.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, growing up, I remember you have to go to school, you have to go to college or university. You pick one job. I always felt from young, from the age of 16, like, this is so stupid. Why? How am I supposed to know what I want to do for the rest of my life? And if you know anything about my life, you would know that I didn't know shit.
None of us do.
No, and I have had